I'm photographer David Duchemin, and this is Vision is Better, a sometimes weekly podcast about the craft and art of photography. Welcome here. Hey, welcome to another episode of Vision is Better. This is probably what will be the third in four sort of special episodes that I'm calling After the Camera Live-ish in support of a product I created a couple weeks ago called After the Camera. After the Camera was kind of my attempt to explain a rather simplified approach, but I think a fairly deep approach to editing and post-production in Adobe Lightroom using something that I call my vision-driven workflow. And so at the time, one of the things I said that I'd like to do is take questions, try to answer those through the podcast, but also to take a few photographs from others that maybe are having a bit of a difficulty with the particular image and see what I would do with it. So this is not an opportunity for me to sort of say, you know, look at my crazy mad Lightroom skills, because my Lightroom skills are not crazy or mad. They are neither. But I do have sort of a way of walking through this stuff that I think makes sense to me. So this is a photograph from Ryan Jones, and there's a couple of things that I first noticed about it. The first, of course, is that there's lots of opportunity for mood in this photograph. There's lots of it there, but I think we can maximize that a little bit more. I love the visual pathway that the eye has coming in with this jagged fence and the sort of the diagonal but near horizontality of it. I think we can maximize that a little bit, bring people into the heart of this photograph a little bit faster. There is sort of a glaring distraction for me, and that is either the building is leaning, or the camera was not straight, or there's crazy amounts of distortion. So the first thing that I would do is I would hit R, which is my crop overlay tool, and just see if I can straighten that building. That actually straightens it pretty well. But now the everything else is kind of wonky. So that tells me that this probably was not the best solution to this problem. So I'm going to close out of the basic panel and go to lens corrections and go vertical, and see if by moving the vertical lens correction to the left can straighten things out without making anything else look weird. And in this case, it seems to have done a pretty good job of that. So now you lose a little bit of the diagonal power of that line here. Watch that line move. All right, so there's always a bit of a give and take. For giggles, I sometimes play with the distortion left or right, because there are some kinds of photographs where you're not going to be able to tell that you've pushed the distortion, and by doing this you can actually create, in some cases you can bring back some of that feeling of that energy, that immersion. See, as I do this line becomes much more diagonal and has more energy again. Of course, I feel like that is considerably that's adding to the problem, not making anything better. But you could, rather than just zero it, you could go in just a little bit and give that a nudge, as long as you don't feel you're also kind of making the lines in the house look funny. So I'm gonna, for this image, I'm just gonna zero it, and I'm going to go back and just tweak that again. It could be that it's actually a mix of both a little bit of distortion and the camera was tilted. And then if you hit constrain crop, that will get rid of everything. I'm going to now hit R, go into the crop overlay tool, and I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to give this a fairly panoramic kind of look, and I'm going to bring this as low as I can. And let's try that again. Give you 16 by 9 and bring this as low as I can. Try it one more time. 16 by 9. There we go. So this is without spending a lot of time on it, has considerably straightened this out. This is the first step in minimizing my distractions. I've already identified the mood, and I have a sense that I want to bring back that kind of very early morning sunlight feel and the warmth of that. I am going to check my spots in the sky and just make sure the image is spotted okay, hitting the Q tool or just activating the spot removal tool. I can see one for sure here, but I'm going to hit A, which brings that mask into view to reveal spots, and I'm just going to get rid of that. That's the only one that I seem to have missed. Hit A again, that gets rid of that. I'm going to park this tool, and now I'm going to go here and warm it up. Mornings to me are a pretty magical time, and if this were my image, frankly, I wouldn't mind bringing back some of that magical kind of feeling. We usually give it a little bit of clarity if I feel that helps. The reason I like that is because if there is any dew on the grass, there are a lot of highlights in the grass where the sun is hitting. This to me highlights that backlit feeling, and I think this is really good. If I were nitpicking, I would say that there is a ball here. I've actually gone in. Well, I won't go any deeper. But there is a color. There's something. It looks like a beach ball, or there's I don't know. Maybe it's a traffic pylon or something. I might get in there and get rid of that, because when I really start paying attention to the image, this does pull my eye. But I won't bother for the sake of this particular photograph. What I will do is go into one of my presets. Now, after the camera sold and was packaged with a set of my own Lightroom developed presets, so if you have that resource, you can go down. And I liked the look when I started playing around with it. I liked the look of some of these presets on the bottom: Toxic, Cool, Heavy, Punchy, Sunset. So I played around, and I like presets as a starting point. So I will go and fiddle around until something catches my eye, and then, like I said, it's a starting point, so I'll continue to mess around. I like that. I think that brings in some magicalness to the photograph, if that is a word. I'd like a little bit more here. I sort of get the feeling that this image there was a graduated neutral density filter, and it was pulled down to kind of here-ish, and as a result, the foreground's quite bright. The sky has been pulled back, but you've suffered here a little bit. So I wonder if just punching the shadows a little helps. It does, but you don't want to lose too much. Fortunately, there's not a lot of shadows down here, but you could also go with a radial filter here, bring it over, invert the mask, push the shadows a little bit, maybe give it a little bit of clarity, see if the dehaze does anything, and that to me is a little bit stronger, and I don't think that we've lost anything by kind of tweaking this. There's a little bit of sun flare. If that bothers you, I would get rid of it. It doesn't bother me. I like sun flare. I'm a bit of a nut for it. But if I stared at this for a while, if, for example, I printed it and then went, nah, I've lived with it for a little while and that bothers me, it would be a very easy matter to go and get rid of this particular bit of sun flare. And there's a little bit here. You could do that there as well. I want to show you one more thing that I think is an interesting technique. This was not packaged with after the camera, but it is sold by Craft and Vision, and it's a set by my friend Dave Delnia, the Dave Delnia Lightroom presets, but you don't need to buy the package. I want to show you his technique because I think it's really interesting, and that is, and you can see things changing as I go up into the presets. Watch this navigator thumbnail as I go through, things change, and this one kind of catches my eye because it darkens the foreground and lightens up the top part, and it really exaggerates the feeling of a backlit scene, which I really like. I don't know that I would go, and it kind of undoes a little bit of the work that has been done with the graduated filter in camera, but I kind of like this. I don't know that I would go quite all the way. So by opening the filters, really what he's done here is he's darkened, big graduated darkening here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce that just a little so it's not quite as strong. Instead of 2.5, it's more like 1.5, right? So I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to hit the Y button, and this gives you kind of a before and afterwards. And the reason I like doing a before and after view on most of what I work on is because after you've been immersed in this and you've gone step by step by step, it's a little bit like being that frog in the boiling water, with that, you know, bizarre metaphor that people use. You know, if you throw that poor thing into boiling water, he immediately hops out. If you put him in the water and slowly heat up the water, urban legend says he will stay in there and boil to death. So aside from being a gruesome metaphor, there is sort of that idea that when we take small, graduated, little incremental steps towards something, we don't maybe notice quite how far we've taken something. So just looking at this, I wonder if perhaps reducing the vibrance would do what I wanted, or even just kind of pulling back that yellow so it's not quite as warm. Then going into the split toning, where my preset, the Toxic Cool preset, affected things, and maybe just pull the saturation in the shadows down a little bit and the saturation in the highlight. You can see what that highlight did by warming it up. I mean, you could really saturate it and really warm it up, but that's a little bit much for me. And then you can change the balance here and see if you get something that you like. I would like to return a little bit of the luminosity into the shadows. And if you look, you've got a little bit of burned outness, which of course you would expect because you've got the sun right in your shot, although we haven't peaked it too much. And then you're losing a little bit of detail, and where you're losing it is way down here. You've just got a little bit that you're losing, and you could do that very simply by going into your tone curve and just pulling up your blacks just a little until that kind of evens out, and pull this down until you regain, you're not clipping there. You're not going to gain the detail back. There's no detail in the sun, but it will print better. And then lastly, I will just go into my detail panel and using Lightroom's default on sharpening, hold the Option key down and move this mask along until I'm only sharpening the meaningful contours in the image, not up here, for example, with none of it, or with very little masking applied. You can start seeing you're actually you're actually, I can't move my mouse and show you, but you're actually, if you look in the sky, you're actually sharpening all of that noise, and most of us don't want to sharpen our noise. So the easiest way to do it is just to pull this to the right, holding the Option key down until only the meaningful contours of the image remain. Right. The argument could be made that you could use some noise reduction in the sky, but I use noise reduction as a bit of a last resort because I don't like the plastic feeling that it brings to my photographs. So again, if you go before and after, you've straightened some things out, you've tried as best you can to keep the energy in this line moving you through the photograph, and you've got a little bit of, I think, a stronger color palette than what I think is sort of a competing blue versus green. Now you have greens and warm greens and warm yellows and browns, a lot of really nice earth tones. So in terms of a color palette, if I were painting, I would choose this color palette intentionally before I chose this color palette here. So Ryan, thank you so much for trusting me with your photograph and letting me play around. I hope this has given you some ideas. I hope it's given you all some ideas about some of the things that you can do with some of the tools in Lightroom. Remember, if you can start with an identification of your intent, and now you may, as you play along with the image, play around with it, you may find that actually you thought you were going in this direction, but this actually suits the feeling better. We don't always know exactly how that intent will be expressed, but if you have a sense of where you're going with this, at least you have a better shot at getting on the right track and or recognizing it when you see it. So thanks so much for joining me. If you've got questions about this or anything else that I've talked about, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. Thanks so much for joining us, for joining me. That must have been the Royal Us. Thank you for joining the Royal Us. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. Remember, gear's good, but vision's better. Take care.